Joining us as promised is Saudi Arabian Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, Adil Al-Jabir. Mr. Minister, thanks for joining us.
Anytime. Good to be here.
We were just talking about gas prices. We were talking about what the president said today in the piece by Peter Doocy from the White House, in which he said gas prices are inching up because of what the Russians and the Saudis just did. What was the decision behind the OPEC Plus move, and how do you react to the president talking about it in that way?
We are very committed to ensuring stability in the oil markets to the benefit of consumers and producers. Over the past year, when we saw shortages, we increased our oil production gradually. Now we are seeing, meaning the 22 countries that make up OPEC Plus, we are seeing shortages. We are seeing headwinds in terms of geopolitics. We're seeing headwinds in terms of growth rates, a slowdown in economies throughout the world. And we want to make sure that we act in a preemptive fashion to ensure that we don't have a collapse of the energy markets, which would be detrimental not only to producers, but also to consumers and the global economy.
Mr. Minister, the president seems to suggest that you all are working with Russia, and it sounds like, and people in his own party say, it's sort of like thumbing the nose at the U.S. at this time, short of an election. Here is Ro Khanna, a Democratic congressman, very fired up about this. Take a listen.
The priority is to get gas prices low, and what we need to do is be very tough on Saudi Arabia. I mean, after all we've done for that country, President Bush, the first Bush, defended them against Saddam Hussein, made sure that they weren't invaded. We give them all of the weapons, 70% of their weapons. For them to do this to the American people is outrageous. And we should say if they don't reverse their decision, we're going to stop sending them weapons.
So how do you respond to that?
I think that this is probably part of the emotions that have to do with upcoming elections. Saudi Arabia does not politicize oil or oil decisions. Oil is not a weapon. It's not a fighter plane. It's not a tank. You can't shoot it. You can't do anything with it. We look at oil as a commodity, and we look at oil as important to the global economy in which we have a huge stake. The idea that Saudi Arabia would do this to harm the U.S. or to be in any way politically involved is absolutely not correct at all. With due respect, the reason you have high prices in the United States is because you have a refining shortage that has been in existence for more than 20 years. You haven't built refineries in decades. You have now, unfortunately, and my condolences to the victims and to those who were injured, I wish the quick, speedy recovery. You have accidents that happened in a refinery in California, and you have a number of refineries in the Midwest that were shut down. It's as a result of this shortage of refining capacity that you have a shortage of gasoline and an increase in the price of gasoline. It has nothing to do with the fundamentals of crude oil supply and demand.
The president's asked a lot about that trip that he took to Riyadh, meeting with the Crown Prince there. He often says that it wasn't about oil per se, but people in his party say that they expected something to come from that trip. Was it at all about oil?
The relationship between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia has been a partnership and an alliance and a strategic relationship for more than 8 decades. We have worked together in a way that benefits both of our countries and our people over the past 8+ decades, and we will continue to do so. The visit of the president had a very broad agenda. It had to do with how we can set the relationship so that we can continue to work together effectively for the coming 8 decades. And I think that the issue of oil and oil production may have been taken out of context by perhaps commentators and analysts. The visit was about the bilateral relationship, our shared vision for the future, how we deal with instability in the region, how we protect our interests, how we promote peace, how we promote economic trade and opportunity and investment, and how we enhance and strengthen this fundamentally important relationship to both countries.
Speaking of promoting peace, the UN brokered ceasefire between Saudi Arabia and Yemen came to an end October 2nd, and the Iranian-backed Houthi rebels have put out a statement saying they are warning of an imminent return to military operations. Where, Mr. Minister, is this going?
It is unfortunate. The agreement, the ceasefire was made between the Yemeni government and the Houthi rebels. The coalition led by Saudi Arabia supported the position of the Yemeni government to enter into a ceasefire, and we supported the continuation of the ceasefire, as did the United States, the UN, and the European community. The Houthis this time around have made a point not to extend the ceasefire to the detriment, unfortunately, of the Yemeni people. We continue to try to press upon them, as does the United States and as does the United Nations, to accept the continuation of the ceasefire so that we can continue to work on reconstruction in Yemen, continue to work on providing food and medicine to the people of Yemen who desperately need it, and to make sure that the Yemeni population can move towards a more pleasant place than where they have been as a consequence of Houthi intransigence and Houthi aggression.
Last thing, Mr. Minister, this is Russia in Ukraine and the threat of nuclear weapons there. Your reaction to President Biden's characterization that we may be closer to a nuclear confrontation at any time since the Cuban Missile Crisis?
We hope not. We hope that any kind of conflict can be averted through negotiations and discussion. We oppose the seizing of territory by force, and we have supported the UN resolution to that effect. We have maintained lines of communication open with both Russia and Ukraine in order to see what can be done towards moving towards a cessation of hostilities and a ceasefire. His Royal Highness the Crown Prince was instrumental in working out a release of political prisoners that included a number of nationalities, including American citizens. We will continue to work to see how we can avoid escalation on both sides and how we can move towards a resolution of this conflict based on logic and based on negotiations rather than based on the use of force. The whole world loses when conflict continues, and it is incumbent upon us to do everything we can to try to find a resolution to this that is a just resolution and in accord with international laws.
Let me end where I started. With the OPEC Plus decision, with EU sanctions on Russia, do you expect oil prices to skyrocket, if you will, in coming days, weeks, months?
No, we don't. If we did, there would not be a decision to reduce the quotas of the OPEC Plus countries. The decision was unanimous. We saw an increase in the a reduction in the demand for crude oil going forward, and there were multiple factors that would have an impact on the supply-demand fundamentals, and we wanted to make sure that we were preemptive or proactive and that we avert a potential collapse of the energy markets that would not benefit consumers or producers. We will continue to watch the situation carefully as we have over the past year, and we will determine what the market needs, and we will make decisions in accord with that, as we have not only over the past year, but over the past decades.
Mr. Minister, Adel Al-Jubeir from Saudi Arabia, thank you for the time.